trees to slow the wind, and also different kinds of cultivation practices for the soils that were mainly meant to conserve moisture. This was the focus. And many farmers implemented these suggested techniques, and I think it was partly effective. But you have to remember that mechanization happened at the same time. Okay, many of these farms already were using tractors before the Soil Conservation Service came. And so from the very beginning, soil conservation was focused on mechanized agriculture as their main interest. And the main, I guess, essentially farmers have implemented these soil conservation techniques to a great extent, and erosion has reduced as a result. But the dynamics of soil fertility were never really part of that equation.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you have the time for any more question, perhaps? No. Okay. Thank you.
Just to know if the native people had any role in this soil conservation, because you talked in the middle of the 19th century they were
Yes.
around the rivers.
Yes.
So what should be the role, if any, around this
Yeah.
long term?
Yeah. After 1860, Native people had very little influence at all. And in part, it's because Native agriculture was so very different. For one thing, they had no livestock. There were no cows or pigs or chickens. This meant that their nutrient management system was completely different. Native people followed Swidden agriculture. They farmed for 5 or 10 years, and then they moved to new land. And because they had very low population densities, they could move endlessly. When Euro-Americans came in, their farming was so different that they didn't feel they had anything to learn from Native people. And also they had very little respect for Native people and mostly ignored them. Okay, so I think the short answer to your question is Native agriculture has had almost no influence on this process.
Just a question. What are the sandstorms of the 30s?
Yeah.
Which was the cause? The traditional agriculture, I think.
Yeah, well, this is a topic I've thought a lot about.
You showed a picture.
I showed a picture, yeah. I mean, it's an impressive dust storm. I mean, you can imagine what this would be like coming across your home. The standard historical interpretation says that these 1930s dust storms were caused by misuse of land. By plowing up land that should never have been plowed, we created this ecological disaster. I don't agree with that. Okay, I've been doing research for many years about dust storms, and it turns out that dust storms were present in the plains long before Euro-American farmers plowed the land. So I've been collecting descriptions of dust storms from before the 1930s, and for at least 100 years, from 1830 to 1930, I've found over 600 descriptions of dust storms that happened before the plow-up. And so I make an argument that dust storms are a normal part of the ecological system, that whenever you have a long drought, a long dry period, dust storms happen. And that farmers came in, and they probably did make the dust storms worse, but it was not the sole cause of them. This is a semi-arid region. In a dry year, between grass, there's a lot of bare ground, and it's windy. And so we have even from the 1830s, when Native people still controlled this area, dust storms like this that lasted 4 days in a row without stopping. So that's my opinion.
Last one.
Well, it's.
Really last one.
Yeah, really last one. It's really impressive, big area, so I guess pessimistic. But is there any tendency or trend from the farmers itself or from the government to promote more organic way of production, or not really?
Yeah, not from the government, for
Or in
sure.
some part, not?
No, if anything, the government farm programs make it more difficult for organic agriculture because they subsidize industrial agriculture, but they don't subsidize organic agriculture. Despite that, some farmers have undertaken on their own to try to develop organic land use. And so there are some efforts, but it tends to be very small areas and specialty crops. So truck crops, vegetable crops to go to the local market are grown organically. But we're talking about vast areas of, 4 different crops of corn and wheat and barley and rye, and almost none of that is organically produced. The one thing that farmers have done is to try to reduce their chemical use because this is expensive for them. And so new techniques of no-till agriculture or low-till agriculture means less fuel and less fertilizer. Sometimes it does mean more pesticides though, because if you're not tilling the soil, you get weeds growing. So I would say that farmers have become more efficient with their chemical use, but they have not, to any great extent, gone to an organic approach.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we're going to start this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Si los parece, hacemos un descanso hasta las 6 en punto para recuperar el tiempo, tomamos un café, nos acabamos de conocer, porque somos pocos y casi nos presentamos todos, y a las 6 en punto continuamos con el criterio.